Hi there, welcome to this Apple Motion tutorial at Motion with James. Today I'll show you how to create this spring animation. It seems simple, but it's actually a very interesting use case of Apple Motion's powerful Replicator tool, and I think it's a good technique to be aware of. Before we begin, I want to give full credit to Dylan Bates, aka the Final Cut Bro, for teaching me how to do this. I had searched far and wide on the internet to figure out how to create something like this in Apple Motion and couldn't find anything. So I posted a question on a Discord server for his Motion Masterclass, which is arguably the best course for Apple Motion out there, by the way. And he responded with a solution and a demo project within the same day. That's how great and kind he is. So with his permission, I'm making this tutorial to share his knowledge in case it helps someone out there. So in the project browser, I'm going to choose Final Cut Title. You can choose Motion Project as well, but if you want to use it as a plugin in Final Cut Pro later, you would want to use Final Cut Title. For this project, we don't need any of these layers, so we can delete them. The first thing I'm going to do is to create the ends of the spring. So we'll use the rectangle tool, and we're just gonna drag and draw like a long rectangle like this. And I will just keep it in the center, like somewhere around here. And now I'm going to create a clone and move it over. This is so that I don't have to change the properties of the ends individually. So I can just go to the rectangle here and I'm going to make it a bit rounder like that. So now you can see that both of them are getting a little bit more roundness. And I'm just going to change the color to something a little bit like wood, I guess, like that. And next, we're going to create the spring in between. I'm going to create a new group. And in this group, we'll use the circle tool, hold shift to make a perfect circle. And then we're going to click replicate. We're going to use a replicator to create the spring. Come up here in shape, choose wave. Now I'm going to come up here to move it to make it start at the beginning, one end of the spring. And we'll now move the endpoint to the other end of the spring. And next, we will increase the frequency like that and increase the amplitude like that. And now I'm going to first make the circle a little bit smaller. We're going to circle, shape, and geometry. And let's decrease the radius a little bit like that. We'll go back to replicator and we're gonna increase the points like that, as you can see, just to make it look smooth. So I'm going to keep increasing. That looks pretty good to me. And you can change the frequency to customize how you want the spring to look like. I'm going to change this a little bit more so that the end piece here is in the middle. And now I'm just going to move the group of both ends to the top, just so to cover the spring. It looks better that way. So now this is starting to look like a spring. And one thing I will do is I'm going to make the replicator here, and I'm going to change the opacity gradient to something that makes it look a bit like metal. So we'll go down here, click light metal. And we'll change the color mode here to over pattern. So now you can see that it's starting to look a little bit more metallic, and we can adjust the color repetitions to make it look a little bit even more metallic. I think that looks pretty okay. You can make further adjustment as you want, but to keep it short, I'll leave it at that. So naturally, we want to make this end to move with the spring, right? So what we need to do is to use the link behavior. We're going to go to replicator, come down here to endpoint, open it, and let's link the x-axis to the end piece. And in source parameter, let's go down to find the transform, position, and the x-axis. So now you can see that there's a little bit of a gap here. We can fix that by going down here in X offset and then just moving that. So I'm going to keep moving that until it lines up like that. So now if you go back to the end piece and you drag it, and you see now it almost behaves like a spring. But if you move it up and down, it doesn't change the spring. So you want to link that as well. So let's go back to Replicator and let's link the y-axis. Let's go down here, add parameter behavior, go to link. And we'll do the same thing. We'll drag the end piece into the source object. We'll go down to find the y-axis, transform, position, and y. And so now if you go back to the end piece and you move it, it moves like a spring. So that is the basic mechanism to how to set this up. Now to make a spring animation is very, very easy because all you need to do is animate the x-axis of the end piece, right? So what we're going to do is we'll come down to the end piece and then we'll go to properties, go to position, let's open it up. And then we're going to animate the x-axis. There's a very handy parameter behavior in motion for this, which is Overshoot. So now we have Overshoot added to the clone layer. And in the timeline, let's set the animation to end maybe around here. You can press O to shorten it. So now let's adjust the behavior. So it starts here. It doesn't do anything right now. And that's because we haven't set anything yet. So what we need to do is go to the end of it. And then let's adjust the end value. Like, let's say we want it to be maybe like that. Let's play and see what it looks like. So it has a bit of already a bit of like a bounce situation going on. It looks already pretty much like a spring, in my opinion. So if you want to make it a bit more bouncier, you can come up here and customize the cycles. For example, if I wanted to bounce more times, I can increase the cycles and I can make it bounce longer and increase the duration. So essentially, you can look at this graph here in the bottom, and I'm going to increase so you can see it better and see how the animation is going to look in the end. So now this spring looks very stiff, but there are some things that we can do to make the animation look even better. Obviously, a real spring bounces much faster. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the ramp duration over here. And as you can see in the bottom here, now the ramp is actually shorter. So now it's more like a looser spring. And I'm going to increase the cycles a little. And then I'll decrease the ramp duration even further. Let's take a look. That's better. Another thing that I think can add a little bit more life to the animation is to make the spring compress first and let it bounce. So what we can use here is the start value. We can lower that. You can see now the spring starts more compressed, and you can see the graph down here that it first goes into negative before bouncing up. So let's see what it looks like. So to me, that looks even more spring-like. Now, you may notice that one issue with this animation is that as soon as it ends, it goes back to the original state, and it doesn't look very good. We don't want that. So what we need to do is to extend the animation to however long the composition is. Let's say it ends here. But as soon as you do that, you'll notice that the animation becomes super long, and we don't want that. To fix that, we can use the end offset parameter. We need to increase it. And if you look at the graph below, I'm pushing the animation shorter. So now it's kind of more front loaded. Let's play and see what it looks like. Actually, I made it a little bit too fast. So let me decrease that a little bit more, like that. Let's try again. Now, I think that looks pretty darn good. I would say that's a success. So one more thing you can do here is to add some motion blur. But first, you need to make sure that your project's shutter angle is set correctly. Go to Project. In Properties, you can set the shutter angle to whatever you want. So right now I have it set to 180, which is the equivalent of 24 FPS. And then I'm going to go up here to Render and enable motion blur. Now let's take a look. Now that looks really good, almost looks like a cartoon. That's it for this video. Hope you learned something new. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.